Everything changed the moment Andrew hinted he was finally ready to talk. A silence that protected the palace for years suddenly started to crack. And the name caught in the middle of that fracture wasn't Charles, wasn't William, wasn't even the monarch himself. It was Meghan. Because according to insiders, the confession Andrew is preparing to release doesn't just clear his own path, it pulls Meghan directly into a chapter the royal family has spent years trying to bury. And now, behind closed palace doors, Charles and Catherine are moving quickly, very quickly, to get ahead of whatever is coming. Because if even half of what Andrew is rumored to reveal becomes public, the monarchy's carefully crafted narrative collapses overnight. Before we go any further, tell me one thing in the comments. Do you think the palace protected Meghan on purpose, or was it all just coincidence? I really want to see what you think. And while you're here, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because what I'm about to show you next will change the way you see the royal family forever. All right, let's dive in. For years, the world believed Meghan walked into the royal family as an outsider, a Hollywood actress suddenly swept into a world she'd never seen before. But that version of the story, according to people who were close to those circles, that narrative might be the most polished lie the palace ever allowed to stand. Because long before Harry, before the wedding, before the global headlines, there were whispers, quiet, unreported whispers, about Meghan's presence in social spaces not meant for the public eye. Spaces deeply intertwined with Andrew's world. Spaces the royal family now desperately wants erased. Sources who were around back then claim Andrew told friends he had known Meghan socially years before Harry was even a consideration. Not in a casual charity gala handshake kind of way. Not a 5-second interaction photographed by tabloids. No, these were shared environments, shared circles, shared rooms. Rooms that only people with access, connections, or extremely strategic introductions ever entered. Which raises the question everyone has avoided asking. If Meghan and Andrew truly crossed paths before Harry, why has that detail been scrubbed clean from every interview, every biography, every sanctioned royal documentary? Why does no timeline mention it? Why does no official record exist? You don't erase something unless you're afraid of the questions that follow it. And that's where things begin to twist. Because the same year Meghan was photographed on a private yacht, not a cruise, not a vacation, but a yacht tied to elite circles, another woman from those same environments, Karina Shuliak, spoke publicly about how exclusive and controversial those social spaces were. She confirmed those gatherings weren't random, weren't accessible, weren't accidental. You were invited or you weren't. So when Meghan appears in that world, in that year, in those circles, it changes everything we thought we knew about how she entered the royal orbit. Now, here's where this story turns from strange to explosive. People inside those circles started whispering years ago that Meghan was not navigating royal life from scratch the way the public assumed. She wasn't overwhelmed by palace etiquette or blindsided by the weight of royal expectation. According to individuals familiar with that world, she had already learned the rules long before Harry appeared, because she'd allegedly been around people who lived by them. And if that's true, then the big question becomes unavoidable. How early did she understand the royal ecosystem? How much access did she have before the cameras ever found her? And who opened those doors for her? That's where the name Marcus Anderson enters the picture. A senior figure connected to Soho House, one of the most exclusive networks in the world. A gatekeeper of elite society. Someone who doesn't just introduce people, he positions them. According to insiders, Marcus brought Meghan into a world she had no previous access to. Toronto's elite, New York's hidden circles, private members clubs, rooms where decisions were made and reputations were built. And one of the most troubling intersections, those same circles overlapped with Andrew's world at the time. Overlapping timelines, overlapping access, overlapping proximity to controversial figures whose reputations have since been shattered. This is where things get uncomfortable. Because once Andrew's scandal erupted, people behind the scenes, those who knew what was happening back then, started quietly asking questions. Questions about who was around during those years, who was present at certain events, who might have witnessed things without realizing how severe they were. And Meghan's name, according to those who were there, came up repeatedly. Never publicly, never in the headlines, but privately, behind closed doors, her name surfaced again and again. But then something strange happened. As soon as Andrew's scandal hit global news, as soon as the royal family went into crisis mode, as soon as media outlets scrambled to cover every angle, Meghan's name disappeared. Completely, instantly, like someone pressed delete. Reporters who had been discussing her connection privately suddenly fell silent. Editors backed away. The palace offered no comment. It was like that entire chapter of history was wiped clean in a matter of days. Why? Why protect that link so aggressively? Why remove every trace of a connection that could have been brushed aside with a simple statement like, yes, they crossed paths socially, nothing unusual? Instead, total blackout. And when you silence something instead of addressing it, it suggests that revealing it would create problems far bigger than denying it. Now, let's move deeper. Because according to long-standing whispers in those elite circles, Meghan's entry into royal life wasn't purely romantic. Some say it may have been far more strategic. Claims circulated that before Harry ever appeared as a viable path into the monarchy, Meghan's attention was allegedly directed toward Andrew first. Not because of love, because of access, because of status, because Andrew was deeply embedded inside the royal structure in ways Harry wasn't. If true, this changes everything. But that pathway allegedly hit a wall named Sarah Ferguson. Fergie, according to people who knew her at the time, recognized the situation instantly, and she shut the door completely. This is the turning point. When one path into the royal world closed, another opened. Harry. Vulnerable, emotional, isolated, still grieving his mother, a man longing for escape and understanding. And Meghan pivoted, fast, seamlessly. People inside those circles say her transition from Andrew's orbit to Harry's orbit wasn't random, it was strategic. She recognized where the opportunity truly was, and she moved. Harry never saw it. He believed he'd found someone who understood him, someone who cared, someone who could help him escape the machinery he'd been trapped in his whole life. So he chose her, over William, over Charles, over the institution, over everything he'd ever known. But eventually, far away from the palace, far away from the noise, far away from the people who warned him, Harry began hearing whispers again. More details, more timelines, more pieces that didn't fit. And according to individuals close to the situation, that realization broke him. But here's where the story becomes dangerous. Because if Harry is struggling privately, Andrew is raging publicly. He lost everything. Title stripped, reputation destroyed, future erased. Meghan, she walked away elevated, protected, untouched by the same circles that crushed him. Andrew watched that happen, and according to insiders, he's done protecting the people who didn't protect him. He has nothing left to lose. Dangerous man in the monarchy right now. And he's not alone. Fergie is aligned with him. She remembers everything. She saw what was happening back then. She blocked it. She knows the timeline. Together, they hold information the palace cannot afford to let surface. If Andrew speaks even a fraction of what insiders claim he knows, the entire narrative around Meghan collapses. Not just the public image, the institutional support, the polished story of how she entered royal life, everything. Which brings us to Charles and Catherine. Behind the scenes, they are preparing their next move. Because Andrew's confession, if real, won't just target Meghan. It will expose years of royal decisions, years of palace protection, years of carefully curated silence. And Charles knows the monarchy cannot survive another explosion. Not after Andrew, not after Harry and Meghan's exit, not after the media wars, not after global trust has already eroded. Catherine knows it too. Those close to her say she has urged the palace to get ahead of the story, to control the narrative before the narrative controls them. But here's the terrifying truth. They may already be too late. Because Andrew's resentment isn't fading, it's growing. And every day he watches Meghan live the life he lost, his silence becomes less likely. What happens when the man with nothing left finally speaks? Everything the palace buried resurfaces. Everything they protected collapses. Every secret becomes public. And the monarchy must face the consequences of the chapter they erased. This story isn't over. It's barely begun. If this opened your eyes, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment with your thoughts, because the next revelation will be even bigger. And trust me, you'll want to be here when it hits.